Welcome back to the Super Rare Coins channel, your place to discover the hidden value and rare facts about old coins. In today's video, we're revealing the top 4 valuable coins, and one of them might just be in your collection. So don't skip this video, let's find out their real worth. Top 1. The 1965 quarter. We need to go back to mid-1960s America. Until 1964, U.S. quarters were struck in 90% silver. But rising silver prices and hoarding had made standard coinage expensive and impractical. In July 1965, the law changed. The U.S. adopted a new composition for quarters, a copper-nickel clad design, with a pure copper core and outer layers of 75% copper/25% nickel. This was a historic shift. 1965 marks the first year that quarters were made without silver content. Though the design remained the same, the obverse portrait of George Washington and the reverse eagle, the metal changed the coin's story forever. The 1965 quarter stand at a crossroads, the end of silver coin America and the start of modern clad coinage. The 1965 quarter has the following specs. Composition: copper-nickel clad. Outer layers 75% copper/25% nickel. Core pure copper. Weight: about 5.67 grams, lighter than silver quarters, which weighed 6.25 g. Diameter: 24.3 mm, with a reeded edge. One of the standout aspects of 1965 to 67 quarters is that no mint marks were used, regardless of whether the piece came from Philadelphia, Denver, or elsewhere. Therefore, a 1965 quarter with no mint mark is entirely normal, not a special variant in that sense. But because of that, it's harder or impossible to attribute it to a specific mint. That if you hold a 1965 quarter and it looks sharply struck, with most details still crisp, some luster remaining, and only light where that would likely qualify as extra fine in XF condition, you can expect good detail on Washington's portrait and the eagle, clear lettering and rim minimal, where on high points some remaining luster. Though not mint state, because 1965 quarters were heavily circulated, there were over 1.8 billion minted. Finding one in XF condition is decent. Not super rare, but more appealing than a worn or heavily circulated coin. It's important to be realistic. 1965 quarters are common. With nearly 1.82 billion struck, many still remain in circulation or private collections. Most are standard copper-nickel clad and have little more than historic or sentimental value. There are rare and collectible varieties. A small number were allegedly struck by mistake on leftover 90% silver planchets, intended for older coins. These silver 1965 quarters are extremely rare. Some error coins, wrong planchets, double die, proof-like strikes, but these are very unusual. For a typical clad 1965 quarter, even in XF condition, rarity is limited. But for the error or accidental silver ones, that's where the magic happens for serious collectors. Let's talk money. What's a 1965 quarter, no mint mark, clad, XF condition, worth today based on recent market data? Typical circulated condition, face value, or about 25 to 90 cents, depending on where in demand. The higher grade circulated a fine. Maybe $1 to $2 extra fine / about uncirculated. Roughly $2 to $5 uncirculated / mint state. MS60, MS66 price from about $3 to $32 plus, depending on grade. If you happen to hold a rare variant, a silver planchet error, or exceptional strike, values can skyrocket. Though genuine examples are extremely rare and sometimes controversial. Some historically rare silver 1965 quarters have sold for thousands in auctions. But for a regular clad 1965 quarter in XF, don't expect huge value. It's more of a historic collectible than a big money coin. Why keep a 1965 quarter in your collection, even if it doesn't bring big dollars? Here's why many collectors do. It marks a major shift in U.S. coinage, the transition from silver to clad coinage in 1965. It's a tangible piece of American monetary history. For coin set collectors aiming to complete year sets, a 1965 quarter is essential. If you're lucky and find a rare error or scarce variety, there's always a chance for something special. Even standard coins age, and older coins often become more collectible simply because they survive fewer remain in good shape after decades of circulation. A 1965 quarter can be more about heritage and collecting than quick profit. And that's our full deep dive into the 1965 U.S. quarter dollar, no mint mark, extra fine condition. The IT may not be a high-value rarity, but it's a coin that represents a pivotal time in American coinage, a small, humble piece that tells a big story. Top 2. The 1967 quarter. You must understand what was happening in America during the mid-1960s. That until 1964, all U.S. quarters were made of 90% silver. But as silver prices skyrocketed and coins were hoarded, the government faced a crisis. The U.S. Mint couldn't keep up with demand. So in 1965, the Coinage Act introduced a brand new metal composition. No more silver, a copper core covered by layers of a copper-nickel alloy, known as clad coinage. The years 1965, 1966, and 1967 were emergency coin production years. The U.S. Mint removed mint marks entirely so that people couldn't cherry-pick coins from certain mints. That is why your 1967 quarter has no mint mark. They were all minted without one. This was done to discourage coin hoarding and to stabilize circulation. The 1967 quarter is part of the Washington Quarter series and shares the same design used since 1932. Obverse. Portrait of George Washington Liberty. Above I in God we trust. To the left date. 1967. Below reverse American bald eagle with wings. Spread olive branches beneath. United States of America and quarter dollar metal in size. Composition. 75% copper and 25% nickel. Clad, core, pure copper weight, 5.67 grams diameter, 24.3 millimeters edge, reeded. A true product of America's shift from precious metals to modern coinage. Your coin is described as extra fine. That means light wear on the highest points. Washington's hairlines, still visible eagles, feathers, mostly sharp date, rims, and lettering clear some original mint luster may still remain, while uncirculated 1967 quarters are more collectible. A clean XF grade still represents a nice preservation level for a coin that has circulated for nearly 60 years. The honest truth, the 1967 quarter is not rare in normal circulated condition, because the U.S. Mint produced hundreds of millions of these during the 1965 to 1967 emergency period to stop coin shortages. However, collectors still value high-grade examples: XF, EU, BU, fully uncirculated rolls of original mint sets, error varieties, off-metal strikes, doubling clip planchets. An XF coin is not rare, but it is above average compared to heavily worn pieces. Time for the question every collector asks. How much is a 1967 quarter worth today? Face value, circulated. 25 to 50 cents fine to very fine, $0.50 to $1 extra fine. Your coin $1 to $2.50, about uncirculated $2.50 to $5, brilliant uncirculated $5 to $12 mint set 1967 coins. $15, $1.25 plus rare errors, valuable ones. $50, $2,000 plus, but these require professional grading. So in extra fine condition, your coin has modest value, but it is still collectible, especially as early clad quarters become harder to find in nice condition. Even though it isn't a high-dollar rarity, the 1967 quarter is still a great coin to keep. It represents a historic shift in U.S. coinage. It's one of the early clad quarters. Coins from this era are aging and scarcer. In clean condition, XF examples are great for building complete sets. Long-term collectors appreciate early clad era pieces. It's a piece of American monetary history, affordable but important. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the 1967 Washington quarter dollar, no mint mark, extra fine condition. A coin from a major turning point in American coinage and still loved by collectors today. Top 3. The 1968 quarter. We need to consider the broader historical context of U.S. coinage. Up until 1964, U.S. quarters were made of 90% silver. Rising silver prices and hoarding of coins led to the Coinage Act of 1965, which transitioned all quarters to copper-nickel-clad composition, WY 1968. The new clad quarters were fully established. These coins featured obverse, George Washington, designed by John Flanagan in 1932 reverse. Heraldic eagle holding arrows and olive branch. The 1968 quarter is historically significant as it's part of the early post-silver-clad coin series, marking the transition to modern U.S. circulating coinage. The 1968 Denver quarter composition, copper-nickel clad, outer layers 75% copper/25% nickel, core pure copper, diameter 24.3 millimeters, weight 5.67 grams, edge readed the D mint mark, located on the obverse below Washington's bust, identifies this coin as coming from the Denver Mint. Unlike Philadelphia coins, which had no mint mark, Denver coins from 1968 carry this D symbol. This makes the coin easier to identify and is of interest to collectors tracking coins from specific mints. Your 1968 D mint mark quarter is in extra fine condition. This means sharp design details remain on Washington's portrait, and the eagle-only light, where on the highest points letters and numbers are fully visible, some luster remains on flat surfaces. XF coins are more appealing to collectors than heavily circulated coins, especially from the 1960s when many quarters were in constant daily use. Let's discuss rarity. The 1968 D mint quarter is common. Over 435 million were minted at Denver. XF examples are less common than heavily circulated coins, making them desirable for collectors who want high-grade coins in their collections. Rare varieties like double dies or proof-like coins exist, but are extremely scarce at SO. While a standard 1968 D quarter is not extremely rare, an extra fine specimen adds collector value, especially for those completing a full mint set from 1965. 1969 at the current market value of a 1968 D quarter in XF condition. Circulated/worn, 25 to 50 cents. Fine, $0.50 to $1 very fine. $1 to $2 extra fine. $2 to $5 about uncirculated. $5 to $10. Brilliant uncirculated MS60, MS65, $10. $1.25 plus rare error varieties, like double dies or proof-like examples, can fetch significantly higher prices, but standard XF coins are mainly of moderate collector value. Collectors keep 1968 D quarters for several reasons. They are part of the post-silver-clad series. XF examples are harder to find than heavily circulated coins. Essential for completing Washington quarter type sets a snapshot of American coinage history in the late 1960s, even though they are not rare in general. 1968 D quarters in high grade are important for historical and numismatic collections. That's our deep dive into the 1968 United States $quarter Denver Mint. D mint mark, extra fine condition. IT may not be an ultra-rare coin, but it has historical significance and collector appeal. Top 4. The 1969 quarter. We first need to consider the historical context of U.S. coinage in the 1960s. From 1796 to 1964, U.S. quarters were made of 90% silver. But by the mid-1960s, rising silver prices and coin hoarding prompted the Coinage Act of 1965, which introduced clad coinage. The 1969 quarter was struck in copper-nickel clad, featuring a pure copper core with outer layers of 75% copper and 25% nickel. This was standard for all circulation quarters from 1965 onward. Design details. Obverse. George Washington's portrait, originally designed in 1932 by John Flanagan. Reverse. Heraldic eagle with outstretched wings, holding arrows and olive branch. The 1969 quarter is part of the classic Washington quarter series before the state quarters program began in 1999. The technical details for the 1969 quarter. Composition. Copper-nickel clad. Outer layers 75% copper/25% nickel. Core pure copper. Diameter 24.3 millimeters, weight 5.67 grams, edge. Readed. One key feature of the 1969 quarter is that it often has no mint mark, standard for Philadelphia minted coins at the time. Coins from Denver and San Francisco usually carried a D or S mint mark, respectively. As a 1969 quarter without a mint mark is from Philadelphia and completely normal. It's not an error or rare minting feature. Your 1969 quarter is in extra fine condition. This grading means most of the design details are still sharp. Minor were on the highest points, such as Washington's hair and the eagle's feathers. Letters and numbers are clear, minimal surface marks, slight remaining luster. Extra fine quarters are more appealing to collectors than heavily circulated coins, especially for the 1960s clad series where millions of coins were minted, but many have been worn down over decades. Now, let's talk about rarity. The 1969 quarter is common in circulated grades. Over 1.2 billion were minted. XF examples are less common than heavily circulated coins, making them desirable for collectors building a complete high-grade Washington quarter set. Rare varieties from this year exist, such as double dies or proof-like strikes, but these are extremely scarce. So while the standard 1969 Philadelphia quarter isn't rare in a general sense, an extra fine example is certainly collectible. The market value of a 1969 quarter in XF condition. Here's a realistic breakdown. Circulated / worn, 25 to 50 cents fine, $0.50 to $1 very fine, $1 to $2 extra fine, $2 to $4 about uncirculated, $4 to $8. Brilliant uncirculated / MS60, MS65, $8, $1.20 plus if you happen to find a rare variety, such as a double die or proof-like example. The value can increase significantly. But a standard XF 1969 Philadelphia quarter is modestly valued, but historically significant. Collectors like the 1969 quarter because it's a key year in the post-silver clad series. Extra fine examples are harder to find than low-grade circulated coins. It completes any Washington quarter type set, offers a snapshot of U.S. currency history during the late 1960s. Even a common coin can have importance when it represents a turning point in coinage history. And that wraps up our in-depth look at the 1969 U.S. $quarter Philadelphia Mint. No mint mark, extra fine condition. IT may not be the rarest coin, but it holds historical value and collector appeal. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more coin insights from super rare coins. Thanks for watching, and happy collecting.